Okay, so today we're going to be looking at using a graphing strategy involving x and y intercepts. So we need to review what an x-intercept is and what a y-intercept is. So let's look at my graph here, and can you tell me where you would see an x-intercept on this graph? Can you give me the coordinate of where an x-intercept would be? 0 and 5, would that for the x-intercept? So an x-intercept passes through the x-axis. So here's my x-axis, right? And I'm looking for a point that touches that x-axis, right? This would be located at 5, 0, because we start at the origin. We move 5 spaces to the right, that's our x value, and y is 0, it doesn't move, right? It stays on the x-axis. Okay, and what about my y-intercept? What's the coordinate? Yep. 0, 5, good. Okay, so we know that we start at 0, and we go up until we hit 5. We move 5 spaces up. Okay, I'm going to draw another line. Can you give me the coordinate of the x-intercept on the line I just drew? Negative 4, 0. Good. What about this one? Yep. 2, 0. Excellent. What do you notice about the coordinates when the line intercepts the x-axis? What do you notice about the coordinate? So here's the coordinates in pink. What do they all have in common? You notice that the y value for every single coordinate is 0. And that makes sense. If it's going to hit the x-axis, y has to be 0. It's not moving up or down. If the line intercepts the x-axis, your y value will always be equal to 0. So the coordinate will look something like this. X, whatever the number is, 0. Okay, so let's look at the y-intercept. I'll draw another y-intercept, another line that intercepts. What's the coordinate of this y-intercept, Ernest? 0, negative 3. Where does this line intercept? What's the coordinate, Jemima? 0, 2, and so on. If I drew this line, where does it intercept? 0 and 8. 6, 7, 8, yeah. Okay, so what do you notice about when the line hits the y-axis? What do the coordinates all have in common? Katie?
The x-coordinate is always 0.
Good. The x value of the coordinate is always 0. Okay, and it makes sense. We start at 0, and you're either moving up or down. 0, it starts at 0. If it starts at 0, you know you're going to hit the y-axis. X is always equal to 0. If the x value is 0, you know it's going to intercept the y-axis. And what would the coordinate look like? Katie?
0, y.
0 and then y, whatever the y value is. So what I've done here is I've written an equation of a line. Okay, we have an x and a y in our equation. And what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how this line would be drawn on a graph using x and y intercepts. If I know the x-intercept and I know the y-intercept, I can connect the points and draw the line, right? So we're going to figure out where does this line intercept the x-axis and where does it intercept the y-axis. Okay, well we know that when the line hits the x-axis, what has to be equal to 0? X or y is equal to 0 if it's hitting the x-axis. What do we just figure out? What? Yeah. Y has to be equal to 0, right? Remember we said that the equation will be x 0. So we're going to use the equation, the original equation that I gave you, okay? And I'm going to replace this y with 0. Because if the y value is 0, the x value will be my intercept, right? So let's watch here. 2x plus 3 over 4 times 0, I'm making y 0, equals 21. You can now solve this for x, right? We only have one unknown variable. We can solve it. Well, what's 3 over 4 times 0? Anything times 0 is 0, so I'm left with 2x equals 21. So I'm going to divide this side by 2. Whatever I do to one side, you have to do to the other side. This cancels out. X equals, what's 21 divided by 2?
No, that's
10.5. Because we know that this line is going to intercept on the x-axis at 10.5, I'm going to draw a point. Okay, so I know the coordinate will be 10.5, so around here, 0, right? If y is 0 and x is 10.5, that's where it's going to hit the line, the x-axis. Sorry, that's where it's going to hit the axis, right? Now we need to find the y-intercept. So to find the y-intercept, which value do I have to make equal to 0? If it hits the y-axis, what has to be equal to 0? Yeah, x has to be equal to 0. It's always the opposite. So now I'm going to replace my x with the number 0 and solve for y. So again, using the same equation, 2, well, if x is 0, we're going to solve this for y. 3 over 4y equals 21. What's 2 times 0? 0. So I'm just left with 3 divided by 4y equals 21. I need to get rid of this divided by 4. How do I undo that operation? What's the opposite of dividing by 4? Multiply by 4. If I multiply this side by 4, this will cancel out. So what do I have to do to the right side? Whatever I did to the left side, I have to multiply by 4. So I'm left with 3y equals, what's 21 times 4? 84, good. Can you solve for y? Divide both sides by 3, and 84 divided by 3 is 28, and my graph is not big enough. When x is 0, so I'm just going to plot that point. When x is 0, y is 28, so I'm going to plot that on the y-axis. So it's going to be approximately around here. This point here is at 0, 28. Now that I have 2 intercepts, this one and this one, all you have to do is connect the points, and draw a line. And there I have it. That line is represented by the equation 2x plus 3 over 4y equals 21.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.